Elizabeth, I have already decided that I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Fantastic. I'm thrilled to be here. Super excited. Let's keep going.
Yay, it's so fun. So let's just start off with the big question. How are
Sure.
you saying yes to yourself in this season?
So the biggest saying yes to myself is that I'm doing my own thing for the first time in 20 plus years of working. So
Wow.
I recently went out on my own just at the end of last year. I published my book. I just started a podcast like literally a couple of weeks ago. This is my first season where I'm saying yes to everything that I wanted to do and maybe been a little too scared to do in the past. So I'm saying yes all across the board.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you. It's
It's so
exciting and terrifying and wonderful all at the same time.
right. And it's all like it has all of those emotions, but it's also the container that holds those emotions are of your own creation. And
Yes.
you get to course correct. You get to only be available for what delights you. You get to do this any way you want because
Yes.
you are also the board of directors and you are also, like it can be terrifying to realize that you're it. And it
Yeah.
can be liberating to remember that you're it.
Yes. Both of those things simultaneously. Absolutely.
Right?
I think
No.
my favorite part of working in corporate America was always the jobs that didn't have a description. They kind of just were created out of a need or a conversation. And now that I'm on my own, I'm kind of realizing the same thing of I'm gonna have to have blurbs on my website so people know generally what I do and what I stand for, but realizing, hey, can I create a career out of not a job description, out of build a consulting practice on not here's just the rote offers that I have of just pick from this menu. And no, let's have a conversation and build something new. And what will come out of it is not something either of us thought going into it. But that's when you get to really fun, exciting, cool stuff.
100% yes. And that is my whole life. So I'm going to say, yes, you absolutely can do that. And you should.
Awesome.
It is. It's so beautiful to like just take that giant inhale and exhale and realize, wait a minute, this is a new adventure. This is a new business, but I am not new. I
Yeah.
know what I'm doing. I would charge this organization quite a lot of money to have me at the helm. And, and I think that that's a great reminder is that we can sometimes, when we are stepping into a new position, primarily as women, we are focused on how we have not mastered the new thing yet
Yeah.
instead of like, oh wait, I'm actually the deliberate creator of what this is going to become. And I'm allowed to do that, and I'm equipped to do that, and I am well skilled and well resourced to do that and to have an
Yes.
impact for the clients that have the pleasure of working with me.
Yes, 100%. This is very timely too, because I'm just reading right now the book The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy.
I
And
love
I love the concept. I've heard the concept before, but this is the first time actually sitting down and reading the book. And I'm realizing how many times I have done something like some of these reframing exercises before and not really put that same label or moniker on it or realized how important or powerful they were, but focusing on the gain of looking where were you and how far have you come versus the gap of where I want to go and how do I still need to get there, and how that can impact like every action, every moment of every day. It's huge, and it's so easy to change your perspective in an instant when you focus on the gain and not the gap. So I'm trying to practice what I'm reading right now and
Oh,
apply that to my life too.
that's so great. And thank you for sharing that. I have not read that book. I read Who, Not How.
Also a great read.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh. That whole thing was just permission. Anything you're procrastinating about is actually because you're supposed to delegate.
Yes, I think that
Okay.
goes really nice. Have you read Marcus Buckingham's Now Discover Your Strengths? Because I think
No.
that's a great book too. It talks about, a lot of times you think about a review of somebody in a corporate setting. I'm like, here's something you did good, but let's make the sandwich of like, here's some things we really need to work on. And then, oh, we'll end on a positive note. And it's always this crappy sandwich that you give somebody in a review. But so much of reviews, and think about this for school and education too, it's focused on how do we improve those areas that you're not good at and try to make those at least decent. And Marcus Buckingham and Now Discover Your Strengths, he's like, let's just chuck that out the window because if you're good at something, you're good at it for a reason. Why do you want to spend all of your time trying to make you mediocre at something you're poor at? Why don't you make yourself exceptional at something you're already good at? And I love that idea. And I think that partners really nice with Who Not How of, yeah, delegate the things you're not good at. If you're not good at it, you're not going to enjoy it. It's you're going to waste way too much time doing it. And I think I wish I'd learned these lessons earlier, but hey,
Right.
better late than never.
I feel like they have more impact because of our life experience.
Probably. Yes.
You
You,
know, they
you can
feel
look back and say, like, wow, I could have done that way faster. Save
right. They
myself a lot of
feel
pain
more
and aggravation.
revolutionary. Like, oh my gosh, instead of if I read it 20 years ago, I might have thought
Yeah, that's true. It's just theory
never work.
then. It's not practically applied. Yeah.
Right. And I love that idea of that second book as well, as you mentioned, like just incorporating that into parenting. I have an 11-year-old, and we had a conversation this morning that, whew, I'm glad I meditated before because I did not show up anywhere near the version of myself that I like. And I I would love to read that book. And because I think that there is this, yeah, I do want to focus on her strengths. Of course, I don't want her to make up in these other areas because they're all about what I think someone else is going to judge and
Right.
not about her,
Right.
about her
Yes.
mother. I mean, it was so about me that was also making it more irritating because
Yeah, it
damn
becomes
it.
very apparent in your children. So I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So I get to see it from all these different fronts. And
Mm.
I think it's very I don't want to say, your employees are like your children, but there are a lot of similarities between parenting and leading that you realize the coaching and mentoring element of it. And it is so apparent, I think, especially with your kids because you're so close to it that sometimes it can be hard to see it. And whew, that's quite the life lesson right there. When when you're confronted with it in your children, especially when you see a lesson that impacts your own life and you see elements of yourself and sometimes the worst of yourself come out in your child and like, oh man, my poor parents, how did they parent this?
Right? Without any of these books that we're reading,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Oh my
You can do an
goodness.
internet search for a quick reference guide of how do I handle this
Right.
situation?
No Dr. Becky for them. Oh my gosh. Yes, I think it's fascinating too, just as you referenced leading teams and how the similarities of raising children, you know, one of the things that set me off, triggered me in my interaction with Amelia this morning was she was asking for what she wanted and
Hmm.
she was doing it and compared to what I actually gifted her. And she's like, why can't you just give me this instead? Like, I don't want clothes, I want toys. And in my head, I'm like, because toys are a freaking waste and take up space in my beautiful house, and I don't want to have to get rid of them later.
And trip over them
Right. And
all
you
the
wear
time.
clothes every day and you're a fashion designer. Come on. I mean, it was in my head, it was actually crazy. And then to like have this light bulb go on, wait a minute, everything in your whole parenting ethos is having her know what she wants and using her voice to communicate what that is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to like, oh, I must be so confusing because I say, just ask for what you want and use your voice, and then you do it. And I say, oh my gosh, that's so ungrateful, blah, blah,
Oh,
blah, or whatever
that's a
else I
harsh reality
actually
check right
yell
there,
out. I
huh?
know. Oh my gosh, but it's so good because me just saying that actually helps because it does sound way more ridiculous on my end when I say it out loud. I was so in the right and it made a ton of
Yeah,
sense when it was just going on in my head.
of course.
So, right? And I think it also just normalizes peopling takes practice and it
Yes.
takes
I love that you just
so
said peopling because my husband and I talk about good peopling all the time.
I've
It
never
originally
used that word in my life.
this actually originally used to be in my bio. And folks said my when I first started out my consulting practice saying I want to focus on good peopling because there's so many. My husband's my life partner. We've been together for almost 20 years. Well, married for almost 20 years, together even longer than that. We spend a lot of time talking about different scenarios. And when I was in corporate, we talk about like, oh, this scenario in this situation, or this is my management challenge, or this is the challenge I'm having with my management team. And we would categorize things as either, well, that's just bad peopling, or this is good peopling. And it was her way to just put a label on, are you putting the human first? Or are you putting the thing first? And it's a big perspective shift. I think a lot of times we are just tempted, especially when there's deadlines and there's money on the line, to just to the person gets relegated to the back. Let's just put them behind. Oh, we got to do this, that, and the other thing, and not realizing if you didn't have that person, you didn't have that team, you wouldn't be able to accomplish any of these other things. The timeline wouldn't happen, the money wouldn't come in, and where our priorities get out of whack very quickly and very easily. And I think that focus on good peopling is so important because are you putting the human first? Are you putting the relationship first? And that's not a luxury. I talk about this a lot of like culture and relationships. They're not luxuries that you do when you have spare time. It's the priority of your business. You are not going to be successful if that's just an afterthought. And it's going to become really apparent to your team, to your customers, to everybody you work with, whether or not that is a priority to you. So make good peopling a priority.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And it's so beautiful how that practice is just an umbrella for every single
Yes.
relationship and scenario in your life. You can't say, well, they get a bonus, so I can be an A
Right.
or whatever. Like I'll make up, and you
Yes.
can't tell your kids, like, well, I'm taking you on summer vacation, so it doesn't matter how I treat you this morning.
Yes.
It all matters because they're all teeny tiny bricks that are building this beautiful house that we're going to live in together. And the time that it takes to rationalize our poor behavior it takes
Yes.
longer than the reframe, but it takes great intention. It takes
Hmm.
practice. Mastery comes from repetition. Like I said, I
Yes.
had already had a 2 hour morning practice and I still lost my shit today. Like it happens.
Yeah, but I'm that too. I mean, this is like mom talking to mom here of just
Right.
give yourself some grace because in that your kids need to see you screw up because they need to see how you recover from a screw up. Because if you never screw up, then they think they don't have permission to screw up, and that's way more pressure. So,
Totally. It's
yeah.
true. Thank you. Received. Received. So tell me about the book. The title is so fascinating and I love it. And I just want to hear more.
Sure. So my book and now my podcast too are both named the same. The title is Cake on Tuesday. The subtitle to my book is 25 Lessons to Unlock Corporate Innovation, and that's trying to give you an idea of what the book's about. But Cake on Tuesday comes from one of the chapters inside of the book, which is called Have a Cake on Tuesday. And just to give a little bit of the premise of this, I spent most of my career in corporate America in enterprise collaboration, and a huge portion of that leading a team that basically operated as a stealth startup inside of big tech. We were
Mm,
building cutting edge technology at the time. It was an end to end holographic collaboration system, really
wow.
cool envelope pushing tech. And most of that time we were in total stealth mode. And so after many years of leading this team and seeing it go from a concept and idea of is this technologically feasible? Could we even do this? To wow, like customers are using this now and I'm handing it over to the product team and I don't have to run this as an engineering startup anymore. Like I'm moving on to my next thing. Through that whole process, I took this time to just sit down, pause and reflect and think that was a wild 8-year ride. What worked? What didn't? What would I do differently? And it really started as a personal postmortem, like writing down this, what worked and what didn't for me through this project. And I just kept on writing. So it's more and more things. And then I started grouping things together of like, well, this kind of all falls under that umbrella and this kind of falls under that. And that eventually turned into a book because I realized this is way too much to just keep in my own personal journals. When I put some organization to this is actually really helpful. And I imagine this would be super useful to somebody else trying to build something innovative. And it's broken down into 5 different sections, which are all different phases of that learning journey. And within each one, there are 5 lessons that I took away from that process. And Have Cake on Tuesday is one of the lessons. And it's specifically about enjoying mini celebrations, finding joy in the journey, and doing everything you can to add fun and joy and levity to the experience, especially when it's a hard experience. Because when you're doing something hard and you're asking a lot of your team, you need to counterbalance that with joy and fun because you can't expect somebody to bring all of themselves if it's just a miserable environment. You're just cracking a whip. So Have Cake on Tuesday came specifically from a season where we were in the middle of some stuff. We'd done some really cool stuff at the beginning. We hadn't gotten to the end yet. We're just kind of in the middle making these improvements that were very important, but they weren't big or flashy. And
Hmm.
so I was talking with my ops manager at the time, like, how do we add some fun to this? We don't have a milestone that's a big, exciting thing we can rally around right now. I'm worried the team's going to just get lost in the slog in the middle. How do we make this more fun? How do we add a milestone when we don't necessarily we have all these mini things? And she had this idea. She's a crafter, maker, sewer. She's now got her own company, Wishwear Accessories. I should do a shout out for her company there. Uh,
Perfect.
she had this idea of, I want to create this wheel of winning. It was kind of Wheel of Fortune style thing,
Fun.
shiny and glitzy and everything. And at the end of our staff meetings, which were on Tuesdays, we were all on video conference because the global team spread around the world. She would spin the wheel and it had everybody's name on it. If it landed on your name, be like, Wendy, you win this week. You just won the wheel. That's all you won. But since you won, we would ship you a cake. Wherever you were in the world, we would just send a cake and it would arrive on your door a day or two later. And so, since our staff meetings were on Tuesdays, that's where Have Cake on Tuesday came from. And the title of the book is Cake on Tuesday.
I love that. So, and I just really felt like I won when you said my name. There's not
I'm not
enough
going to send you a
wheel,
cake after.
right? Which also leads me to ask, who shipped your cakes?
Ashley, my amazing ops manager.
That's
she
amazing.
would she would talk to the because it was a global team. So she
Right.
became very quickly became an expert in international logistics because she's like, how do I get a team to show up in Norway? How do I get a team a cake rather to show up in Norway, a cake to show up in Ireland, a cake to show up in Utah, a cake to show up here. She was like looking at all these places around. So she would reach out, find a local bakery, and have them deliver to you. Yeah.
Which I just love that
Yes.
because it's this giant global team that's also celebrating this micro local business that
Yes.
now is a part of this big, beautiful picture and now a movement, which is your book and podcast. It's all so gorgeous of this integration that
Yeah.
came from celebration.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of 25 lessons that go into this book. And I feel like they're so important because they're all little things on their own, but you put them all together and it creates such a major impact and force. And realizing a lot of that is just, it's talking about culture.
Yeah.
And I do think specifically in corporate America, we end up culture is an afterthought. It's a buzzword. Everybody wants to talk about it. Yeah, yeah, we've got that. We've got that on our, it's one of the 5 bullets on our mission statement.
Mhm.
And everybody talks about, yeah, yeah, culture is important. But if you look at the way people spend time and money, culture is not important.
Right.
It's always the afterthought. And a lot of times when we think about, oh, a corporate team building thing, like your reaction is you want to cringe, like, oh,
Right.
it's gonna
It's
be
just,
all, I do I have to do this?
yeah.
But realizing it doesn't require a lot of money, but it does require a lot of thought
Yeah.
to create an important culture and make that a priority. And it really is the little things, it's the little inexpensive things that you're doing, but all those together, that's what creates culture. And when you have culture, my podcast, which is Cake on Tuesday, the Leadership Blueprint, it's focused on the idea of how culture breeds innovation. And
Yes.
so when you want to do things that are hard and new and different, you have to start with culture because that will create an environment in which you can have innovation. If you don't focus on crafting your culture, that's a huge innovation killer right there.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's so revolutionary and simple at the same time. It's like
Right.
it's an
Simple yet profound.
right. It's
Yeah.
such an easy yes. Like, um, obviously, and yes, and let's shift the way we've been doing this by
Right. And when you see it in
outsourcing.
action, it's so apparent. And the lack of it is so apparent. But it's so easy to overlook too.
Right. Or think that you've checked the box,
Right.
but you're not checking the box because you've outsourced it to an HR department that is so far removed from the team that
Mm-hmm.
they're planning the offsite for that it's a complete disconnect, which leads to the eye
Mm-hmm.
roll, which leads to the
Exactly.
why am I spending one more minute in this
Right.
environment of people who don't know me, don't see me, don't value me, and now have wasted money. I would have preferred a check. Speaking
100%.
as
Exactly.
my ex-husband in corporate, like that was, I'd be so excited. Ooh, let's go to the picnic. I want to meet people that you work with. And those were all the things he would list. It's like, I don't want to do any of that.
Right.
So
Because then you're trying to force fun, and that's not fun for
oh
anybody.
my God, mom to mom, you cannot force fun.
Yes, your kids will remind you of
Oh my
that.
gosh, they can smell a rat. Oof, they can.
Yes,
Um,
anybody can. You can tell with when it's authentic and when it's not.
totally. And I love that, not to put one more responsibility on a team lead, but also like who knows better for that group than probably even that team lead's admin of, what would really be a
Yeah.
benefit to that
I think
group. That,
administrative staff and operational staff are a hugely overlooked resource of
right.
they know so much about what works and what doesn't work about your organization and the pulse on the team of where everyone's attitude and mindset are. They know all of that information. And are you asking for it? Are you using it? Yeah, it's a
Right.
huge
And whose
resource.
kid is playing little league and who's in a play
Mm-hmm.
and who's doing college tours and they know everything.
Yes, everything.
Oh, it's amazing. I love the story, and I'm assuming that you've told the story about Cake on Tuesday so many times, as it
Yes.
is the title of the book, and it's an easy question. Are there any of the other 25 that obviously they were the most important of the 2,500 lessons you learned in that 8 year time? But are there any that you really feel like this one's not getting enough airtime and it's so good?
Hmm. So that's an interesting question because I usually get asked about, which ones are getting airtime, which ones are popular, and I have some fun little titles in there. Like one of my chapters is called "Don't Be a Flat Squirrel," and I get questions about that one all the time,
Sure.
or people will guess by it, like, is that about decision making? And yes, 100%. What doesn't get enough airtime that I wish would? There are I mentioned that it's broken down in 5 sections, and my simplest way to describe it is your first 3 sections are all about different facets of starting, because starting is so hard and building momentum and overcoming inertia. So it's heavily biased towards that front end system. And then the fourth section is titled Leading Through the Barren Middle, which is all about persistence and how do you encourage yourself through those dark periods and move a team forward. I would say the last section, which is it, I titled it Insights from the Rearview Mirror. And my focus was on those lessons that you can't always understand when you're in them, but you see them later in hindsight. I think those last 2 sections are less. reactive to people, I guess, or maybe less sexy or as exciting as everything in the first three that's all about starting, because they're the slow burn. They're the those lessons that really take some time. But I think really that the value of, I talk in Leading Through the Barren Middle about being careful who you listen to. And I
Mhm.
think that's such a huge one for everybody. Maybe,
Life
maybe
for
for women in
peopling.
particular, honestly, because I think it's finding the balance between, you want to have, there is wisdom in many counselors. You want to have advice. You want to make sure that you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. So you are actively soliciting input and advice, yet at the same time, especially if you're trying to do something new or different. We were talking about this just before we hit record on this about, your journey in this podcast, which I love, by the way. But what you want to do and what you find success in, there might not be a job description for that. There might not be a college degree for that. It might be something unique and different. And reminding yourself that while you should be getting input and wisdom from other people, people can't lead where they haven't gone. So if you're trying to blaze a trail and go somewhere new, you have to be okay with being out there and being in front and being alone. And I love fiction and fantasy, and I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings. And that was a whole one line in there about Galadriel talking about to have a ring of power is to be alone when she's talking to Frodo. And I use that quote in my book actually, because when you're leading an innovative venture, there are times where you are out front and you have to make sure you don't lose your team and your sponsors. And when you've got a crazy vision, you got to bring them along with you. But you are out front, and all the bugs in the proverbial windshield are going to be smacking you first. And you have to make sure that you are cheerleading yourself and encouraging yourself and reminding yourself of your why, and being careful who you listen to, because some people will naysay your idea even with the best intentions. And if you internalize those, you might stop and just shy of doing something amazing.
Oh, that's such beautiful advice. And we know there's never a crowd on the edge.
Yes.
So, so really, I love that in in being very intentional about who you take advice from
Yeah.
and what edges they've been on, or
Mm-hmm.
what edges did they turn away from, and
Mm-hmm.
is their counsel validating their decision
Right.
rather than
Exactly.
propelling you to yours.
Yeah. Apply that filter and you might have a very different take on that advice you just got. Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned gendering that a bit. How was that for you being in this innovative windshield? As you said, that was so great that all the bugs are hitting you. My gosh, that's a fantastic visual. How was that outwardly? Like, were you encouraged? Were mentors and industry thought leaders championing you? And how did that um, coexist with the narrative that you had on repeat as well?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting question. I don't know. I've never really looked at the world through a gendered lens. And there's a lot of times where I'll recognize something in hindsight and I didn't realize. There were times where I might walk out of a meeting and realize, oh yeah, I was the only woman there. Or, oh yeah, kind of didn't realize. The thing that, honest, funny little aside, the
I
thing
love
that
it.
always brought it to light the most was going to a tech conference. There was always, I didn't have to wait in line for the women's room. And I loved it. But it was such a silly little thing. But it was when I was first coming up with the idea and the pitch for the what eventually became WebEx hologram, I was pregnant with my first child. And then I made the pitch for it, and then I came back to work after maternity leave, and that's when I started leading the team moving forward. And I was going to a lot of industry events, trying to stay at the time focused on augmented reality and what's out front in that space. And so I'd go to these crazy tech expo things and these wild. I was in San Francisco Bay Area at the time, San Jose, and you would just tech was everywhere and
Yeah,
you
I
just
moved here from
wild
Saratoga.
conferences. And oh, okay.
We
Well,
were
perfect. I lived
neighbors.
in Campbell for a while.
Yeah.
We really were.
Yep.
It would go to these events, and it was after my daughter was born, and I was lugging around a breast pump and a cooler and all these things to go to these events. And there's a lot of times they don't have accommodations for,
Yeah.
pumping at these things. But it was always nice because the women's room were usually never crowded at all. So I could just go in and get a large stall, hook all my stuff over the door, and like have to
Yep.
pump in these random places. And I'd be very reminded in those moments of, oh yeah, there's not a lot of other women here in this season
Right.
of life doing this thing. And so it would become apparent, but I don't think it was ever really at the forefront of my mind. I had a lot of amazing mentors myself through my career, and honestly, most of them were men, just because I didn't know a lot of women who had done things in the space that I was in at the time. That's changed since, and 20 years since I've or more since I first started my career.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more very visible women in a lot of these spaces. But I don't think that was really a lens that I viewed the world. I think it became more apparent to me later in my career when I started coaching and mentoring some younger women in their career. And it also came apparent in the book too. I found my very first chapter in my book is titled Be Disagreeable. And I talk about the power of disagreement, which is a topic I speak on a lot as well, too, that a disagreement a lot of times gets a bad rap and it's looked at as this negative thing, when in reality, you want people to poke holes at your idea. You want disagreement and dissenting opinions because that's going to help an idea become better. And so Be Disagreeable is talking about the whole project that the book is based on. It never would have started if it weren't for an argument. And I talk about that argument that I had with my boss at the time, and that's how this all came to life. And trying to reframe disagreement in a more positive light. But that chapter has resonated with women far more than with men. And I just find that really, really interesting. Almost every female reviewer in the early instances of the book commented of like, man, that first chapter got me. Whereas men, it would be a chapter later on. There's one about simplicity. There's one about decision making or something. They were like, oh, that one really resonated with me. And for women, it was always that first chapter on Be Disagreeable. And I found that really interesting. So
It
I
is
found
interesting.
the
I
lessons yeah, go ahead. Go
sorry,
ahead.
no, finish, please.
Oh, I was just thinking, the lessons that I would get later when I was coaching younger women in their careers, a lot of times I would see more parallel threads. And then I think in that hindsight lens, I could see some of those things in my own career. I just maybe didn't identify it earlier on. And then it maybe helped give it a little bit more clarity and form.
Sure. Earlier this year, our podcast listeners and I did a special book club because I had finally opened a book that I had on my shelf for 2 years called On Our Best Behavior: The
Hmm.
Seven Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay for Being Good.
Mm.
And it's by Elise Lowen. And it was, I didn't open it for 2 years because I was pretty sure it was going to make me mad. And I didn't want to be mad, which, no, one for the patriarchy. Like, oh my God, that's exactly the not mad for sure. And the best way to be not mad is ill informed. So, why
Funny.
that was really prompting my question, because there's the whole chapter on pride and about, just don't get a big head and don't get ahead of your skis.
Yeah.
Don't, but it's like, how do you're innovative and you are on the leading edge of technology and thought. And that's why I was wondering when I was asking you, how did that play out with your own narrative, your internal narrative of like, can I produce something that is in test mode? Does it have
Yeah.
to be perfect right out the gate? Or, like, just I just
Yeah.
wondered how that's just so top of mind this year.
Right.
Now everything I see.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting. I don't know that I would necessarily put a gender lens on it first. I almost look at it as more of men and women. We all struggle with imposter syndrome. We all struggle with validation and, well, okay, yes, I got accolades for this, or people recognize that, but do they really know? Like maybe they didn't know I was winging it in the situation,
Right.
or whatever the case is. And
You
it's interesting. I
saw
read
the
it.
disorganized hall closet, then you
Oh
would know that I do not know what I'm talking about.
right. We're on a Zoom call, but if you could see what's out of view of
Right.
this. I think that whole topic, and I read a statistic about this before too, of saying, I think oh God, I don't remember the exact percentage. It was in the 90s though. It was saying the group of individuals with the highest, suffer the most from imposter syndrome are graduating PhDs, which is
Yes.
really interesting when you think about it from one perspective. I'm like, you just got like one of the biggest validations that you could get. Like, why would you be? But if you think about it from another perspective, that kind of makes sense because you're putting so much pressure on yourself of I am just starting out with this big fancy title now and this stamp of approval saying I'm an expert in this area, but oh geez, now I have to live up to that.
Right.
And that could be terrifying. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really interesting. And I've spoken on this topic before of the power in admitting that you don't know everything. And I that's something I definitely have done many times in my life.
Well, of course, everybody knows that to be true.
Everybody knows it. It's very freeing when you admit it to yourself,
Yes.
one, and you say that's okay. But as a leader, it's very freeing when you, as the leader, admit that in front of your team. Because I like the analogy of thinking of it almost as like deflating a pressure valve. Like you're removing the pressure from the team. Because if you as the leader are like, hey, I know everything, I'm amazing,
Right.
just why would you bring something up? I already know the answer. You are consciously or subconsciously, you are putting that pressure on everyone in your team to have that same level of performance. Every time they
Mhm.
open their mouth, you better have all your facts figured out, better be the best possible answer anybody could come up with. You better be topping me, or like, why are you even bothering to say anything? And man, what a way to kill innovation and brainstorming, right?
Talk about
Like,
culture. Ugh,
yeah,
that was
but that
painful.
right, but you don't realize that you do that subconsciously. I tried to be very aware, and I've had this conversation with other managers before too, of like simply by the nature of the business hierarchy. If you are the boss, you could be the nicest person in the world inviting all the opinions, but there's a natural hierarchy that exists because at the end of the day, you're the one writing the paychecks and you're the one writing the reviews. So you have to acknowledge that there already is this pressure on people to say, oh, well, I want to put my best front out there for my boss. If you can help deflate that by coming in and admitting, look, I don't have all the answers. Like I had this thought, but I keep running into this problem and I can't figure a way around that. What do you guys think? That's that's a very casual, informal, not long way of removing some of the pressure. Whereas even just the simple verbiage of how many times have you been in a forum where somebody, the boss, starts out with like, hey, we're facing this problem. I want to hear from everybody. All ideas are valid, but let's start us off. Here's my idea. Blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
You've just shot down every good idea in the room
yeah.
because rather than poking holes at yourself and saying, like, here's where I'm struggling, here's what I can need more, I don't know everything, you've just said, here's the bar.
Right.
You better be above that or you'll be found lacking. And it's such a little simple thing. You're doing the same thing. You're throwing out your idea first, you're kicking off the conversation, but it's just that positioning
Oh,
that can make or break the brainstorming in the room that's going to happen. And I think being aware of that, there is, more power, more responsibility. When you are in that position of authority, you have to be aware of all the things that come with that, even subconsciously. And you have to make sure that you're creating an environment. Again, it's back to crafting culture and focusing on that
right.
environment, creating an environment where you are inviting these outcomes and you are rewarding the behavior that contributes to those outcomes and not subconsciously squashing them.
Yes.
That's such a
Yes.
big thing.
And no one's going to think you're an idiot. You're already the boss.
Yeah, right. And if you are feeling like you are an idiot, I mean, you have to deal with your own internal demons of imposter syndrome, whatever else is going on. I think I don't I almost feel like it was an advantage for me to an extent that I ended up leading a bleeding edge engineering team inside the offices of the CTO, and my degree is in English and business. Like that was a plus for me
Yeah.
because it was already a known of I'm not a PhD in this engineering field and I've already done all this myself and now I'm leading a team to do. No, my point in being here is not because I can write the best algorithm or I can, do this great technological feat. My point is being here is I'm good at peopling.
That's right.
I'm good at taking all these experts in their little areas and putting it together and creating something better and helping them contribute even more. And I always like the sort of Steve Jobs philosophy of that. It's like, what instrument do you play? He's like, I don't want to play the orchestra. Like that's such a great way to view it is I don't have to be the best flautist or the best violin player. I'm openly admitting that y'all are better at that than I am. And that's okay. I'm really good at playing the orchestra though. So let me lean into what I'm good at and you lean into what you're good at, and together we'll be better.
Oh, it's so good. It gives me chills. It almost makes me want to get a job, but I don't.
Almost, but not
Almost. Right.
quite.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so how does it feel transitioning from what sounds like an amazing project, an amazing run, even more celebrated in the editing the story of it through your book and mining this treasure chest of lessons to now having your own firm and starting new things, talking about it on the podcast, doing all these things. How has that transition felt for you?
Pretty wild. And it's been fast and slow at the same time.
Mhm.
So I think fast because anytime you're doing something on your own where it is you, everything is on you, like the to-do list can get really long. So
Yep.
there's always activity, there's always stuff going on. It seems really fast. But through this all, it's been a wonderful journey of self-discovery because I'm getting in that second half of life here, and I think you get much more reflective on what am I spending my time on, and is that valuable to me? Is it valuable to the world? You don't want to waste time as much.
Right.
So I think that self-reflection journey has been a little bit slow for me. Maybe I'm just a slow learner. I don't know. I enjoyed everything that I did in my corporate career, and my original intent when leaving corporate and going out on my own was this was great doing this for somebody else, but I want to do it for myself. So I'm gonna do this. And then realizing, you know what? There's so many different options out there. You work with one client, they might really need leadership coaching. You work with somebody else, they just need a keynote for their event that's going to help open up ideas for people. You work with somebody else, and it's a small workshop for getting their leadership team together to really get through some hard problems and figure out what's next. It never looks the same, and you can't
Right.
predict it. And I'm really enjoying the piece of my job right now that has more of a teaching element, which is not something I set out to do and not something I was originally focused on. But now I'm exploring that, and I'm talking to somebody next month who's a doctorate and professor at a pretty reputable university, and I want to see if there's an opportunity for us to build a course together. And then it's really interesting of, ooh, what could this lead to? And that's so exciting. I think I'm overly biased towards innovation because I spent most of my corporate career there and just looking at the new and what's possible. But that season of where I am right now, it's all the things that come with innovation. It's terrifying and scary and unknown, but wildly exciting because there's so much opportunity in the ambiguity.
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. I love I love all of that. I love that it's so entrepreneurial wrapped up in this corporate situation that you had because
Yeah.
it was so in how do you say not innovation but innovative? Is that the word? I don't even
Innovative. Yeah.
innovative.
That's,
Thank
yeah.
you. I was like, that doesn't sound like the right word. It is so innovative, and you are moving forward, and you are satisfied with what is and eager for more. And you have this, there's enough moving parts, there are enough moving parts in what each client brings
Hmm.
to your experience, that is what is having you on the leading edge of thought, because you are just problem solving or solution seeking
Yeah,
in all of
exactly.
these different areas, but pulling from this vast experience and knowledge that you almost have the same answer for, because it just has a different spin and how it's going to
Yeah.
in their scenario. I
Yeah.
As you were talking, I did not lead a technology team on cutting edge inventions. I was a wedding planner for 30 years. And
I don't know how you had the grace to do that. Good
oh,
on you.
well, I loved it. Two reasons. It wasn't my wedding.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I'm really, really good at it.
There you
I'm
go.
really good at the people. I'm great at
You're a
people.
good peopler.
I
You're
am a
good at
good
peopling.
peopler. And I loved that. And I loved that, okay, it's a wedding every Saturday. It's not the same wedding, and it's at a
Right.
different venue. And like, here we're in this hotel
Right.
ballroom, and then here we're at the beach, and then here we're at a winery, and now we're in a park and someone's backyard, and top of the mark, and like all of these
Yeah.
fun and fabulous things, that there was enough similarity that could focus and also expand my
Yeah.
skill set and experience and contribution, but enough change that
Right.
kept it really exciting and really fun. And, it could
And what
be
more could you ask for? That's the
right.
perfect combination, right?
And every time I went to work, it was the best day of their lives.
Yes, that's true.
It was just so good. Everything about that was so good and so fun.
That's very cool. That's a
Pardon
good perspective on it too.
me. Yes. So I love that you are getting like these tweaks of solving new problems and
Yeah.
creating new things without, finding some new tech advance.
Yeah. It's funny. I just had this sort of flashback a minute as you were talking. I was thinking about the fact of, we were talking earlier, I was saying my favorite jobs were always the ones without job descriptions. And with what I'm doing right now, it's the hardest thing is having a business card. Like, what do you put on the business card? Because it's different for all these different things.
I
And
see you.
I like spy novels and mysteries and all those things. And I always thought it was cool, these stories we'd have, like somebody would just slip somebody a card and it just had a number on it or it just had a name on it. So like, it was all the mystery that goes with it. I'm kind of laughing because I'm almost at the point now with my business cards. I don't want to have a title. I don't want to have a tag. I just want to have, when you need to give somebody contact information, just here's a name and a number. Like
Right.
we'll figure it out together.
Bond, James Bond. I mean, I completely see you in that as a multi-passionate entrepreneur who is saying yes to herself
And all of the things.
every opportunity. And it's just making my bio longer and longer and longer. I recently interviewed a woman, Julia Brooks, and I tasked her in our interview. It's like, okay, clarify my message, because I it's disparate, yet
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. I mean, you mentioned earlier before we hit record about just the one line that I have
Oh
in
yeah, and your podcast thing. I
booking
love
the
it.
podcast. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm a single mom running a historic bed and breakfast on a small New England flower farm and planning my next culinary adventure to France for solo female travelers. And that means I only record this podcast on Thursday.
Okay, if that's your first line of a book, I'm reading the rest. Like, honestly, that's such a good start. Okay, whoa, this is different. This is interesting. I want to
I
know the rest
love
of the
it.
story.
I love it. And I love that it made you want to be my friend.
I did, and I do, and I now I'm becoming.
Right back at you. It's so fun. It's so, so fun. I have absolutely loved this conversation, just like I knew I
Likewise.
would. Please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, how they can get their hands on the book, listen to the podcast, all the good things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on my website, which is elizabethbieniek.com. But I understand it's not the easiest name to say or spell. So if you go to cakeontuesday.com, you will find all the things. It will refer to my website where you can find the podcast, you can find the book, Cake on Tuesday, 25 Lessons to Unlock Corporate Innovation. It's on Amazon. There's an audio version, Barnes& and Noble. You can get anywhere books are sold.
Perfect. And we will link everything down in the show notes. But thank you
Thank you.
so much, Elizabeth. I know this will not be our last conversation.
I certainly hope not. It was fantastic, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you.